What's up, everyone? Gentlemen, Iowa State has a new head coach. How are we? Chris, how are you?
I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. We had a 6 a.m. flight to get here to Arizona. So I've been up like 1 o'clock in the morning Pacific time where we're at, but I'm locked into my Uncle Tracy's little den here. And I'm ready to get after it here for a little bit. Right. Big news today, kind of news we all suspected was coming after the last 48 hours or so. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it, and I'd love to answer questions from fans who are streaming with us. And let's go. First of all, Jared, you're the basketball savant here. What do you think?
Man, I mean, I think this is a good move, man. I think that we've heard everything that you guys have said, but at the end of the day, TJ Otzelberger is going to get players' names, and you can't win basketball games without good players. And it's not that Steve Prohm couldn't get players here, but I think that there was a lack in vision of how those players were going to fit together. I don't think that's going to be an issue with Otz, and I think that this is a huge hire for Iowa State. I think it's going to be one that's successful, and I'll say too, it would not surprise me at all if this does not end up being a 3-year type thing, like what Jamie Pollard talked about, just with the reality of how basketball goes and how quickly things can turn with 1 or 2 players. I think that I've got confidence in what TJ can do in that sense, and getting guys names and making this something that can be back where we expect it to be sooner rather than later.
And Chris, quickly,
yeah, go ahead, Maddie.
I was just going to say that I know you haven't seen the video, but Jamie Pollard did release about a 12, 13-minute video kind of laying out the process of the hire, kind of went into his explanation on why they decided to pull the trigger on Coach Otzelberger. Obviously, when the coaching vacancy came up, when Fred left, he was obviously one of the final candidates. And I think you guys have discussed this, but his lack of head coaching experience was a factor. I know with the previous administration at Iowa State, with President Leaf, that was a big issue. But now that he's left, he's had, Chris, 5-6 years of head coaching experience, South Dakota State, and had really good success there, won a couple of conference titles and went to the NCAA tournament with them, and has gotten things back on the right track. I know they haven't had a ton of success at UNLV, but gotten things back on the right track, had a decent season this year. So, yeah, I want you to kind of break this down, Chris. You obviously know TJ better than both of us, but let's get your thoughts too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this goes back to 2006. Okay, this isn't, there's a lot of people who I've seen out there be like, oh, it's such a quick decision. How do you make it so quickly? This isn't. I mean, this is a lot of things in life where, you start to make impressions when you're young. And you hope to carry that on, and it leads to opportunities in the future. And I remember, I was kind of reflecting on our flight here today, thinking that this was going to happen. And full disclosure, if you didn't listen to the podcast the other night, I'm not going to hide it. TJ Otzelberger is one of my best friends. Okay, this has been the case for a while now. I'm not going to sit here and lie to the audience. We're very close. Our families are close. But it goes back to 2006 for everybody, really. Greg McDermott's hired as Iowa State's head coach to replace Wayne Morgan, and he hires this 26-year-old from Chipola Junior College in Florida named TJ Otzelberger to kind of come in and be a recruiter, right? And it was at that moment where Jamie Pollard is in year 1 of his tenure, TJ Otzelberger is in year 1 of his tenure. And so when Jamie Pollard says these things in the video that he's watched, he's observed TJ literally from day 1 of his professional career. TJ, much of the reason why he goes off to Washington is to get more experience, guys. It's to learn from more than this 1 or 2 people, right? And you go off and you recruit a different part of the country. He has California background with the Pump brothers back in the day. Then you go out, you come back, and you're here for a year with a lot of those guys that you recruited. You see them through a really good season, and then you get this great opportunity at like Iowa State, just in the Summit League, just really a smaller version of Iowa State. I've been to Brookings a couple times. And then I kind of read it in 2019, Iowa State extends Prome. That's when TJ moves on to UNLV. And that's it's another step up in his career. My point being, Pollard didn't just like stumble into anything. Like, this has been 15, 16 years in the making. And I love it because I just think that, one, I know two things. We see a lot of people talking about this, and I can answer a lot of these. One,
yeah, we'll get to your questions here in a little bit.
He's going to bring a great staff. I know that for a fact, and I can elaborate on that. And two, like what Jared said, I mean, he's a proven recruiter at Iowa State, and I think that the coming few years in college basketball with the transfer market, with name, image, and likeness, all that stuff, I think that relationships are going to be more important than anything, way more than ever before. I truly believe this. The one thing I can say that I admire the most about TJ, it's a man who generally will recognize his weaknesses, and he'll make a hire to compensate that, right? Like, he wants to learn, he wants to grow. And so that I think that there's a lot of positives here. We're going to keep working on it. As far as getting you guys like staff and all that stuff, I mean, it's obviously too early right now, but I think people will be really happy when they see the type of staff that he's going to compile at Iowa State.
Yeah,
that's
a good point.
Do you envision him retaining anyone from the prior staff?
I do think one guy I would definitely look for. It's my wife and daughter. You can wave at everybody. We're on. Yeah.
There's only 500 people watching.
Yeah. This is family vacation stream here. Iowa State breaking news.
Chris, why are you always gone? Why are you always gone when this stuff happens? I mean, it's the running joke, but it's true.
It's so true. We were on my honeymoon when Hoiberg, not when Hoiberg was hired. Oh man, it was like I think he got like 3 of those transfers. Anyways, what did you just ask me? I'm sorry.
So the staff.
If anybody will be retained from the prior staff.
Oh, I think Micah Byers would be a guy I would circle immediately. Micah Byers would be he's an absolute rock star in that basketball operations role. So he came to Iowa State on Fred Hoiberg's staff due to the recommendation of TJ Otzelberger. Micah and TJ were together at Chipola Junior College back in the day in Florida. It just seems like a natural, and that basketball ops role is a lot like the weight room coach, where they spend so much time with the guys, helping them with academics. They do all the scheduling. He would be a guy, like, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And the other one would be Danielle Robinson, I would think, would be an option. They worked together on Greg McDermott's staff back in the day. I know they have a great relationship to this day. D-Rob has been an absolute rock of a recruiter throughout the Prome era. And he was, I think you have to start thinking about keeping some of the guys that you currently want. And a guy like that would be Xavier Foster, who was his primary recruiter. So those are the 2 off the top of my head. I can't see anybody beyond that, but those 2 I would think would be I'm speaking out of turn, though. I think Micah for sure would be I don't want to seem I'm speaking for TJ because I haven't had any of these conversations, obviously, but that's all just off the top of my head.
I'll jump in here quick, Jared. Can I jump in real quick? So
sure.
Obviously you guys talked about one of the biggest factors coming in is going to be the recruiting class. I know TJ had a really good recruiting class coming into UNLV this next year. I think it was top 20 maybe in the nation.
Yeah, 15, I think.
15. So Chris, do you anticipate, or Jared, maybe do you anticipate some of those guys kind of flipping over to Iowa State at all? I know that's a pretty common thing with coaching changes, but I know, Chris, another guy that you love, Caleb Grill, left Iowa State to UNLV. Any chance he might come back, you think?
Jared, I don't know how that would work. Like, I know transfer rules are lightening up, but would he even be able to do that? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this. I was wondering if we need to take the grill cover back off, fire that baby back up, dig the charcoal out. But
I was thinking of 2 gifts to put out when I saw the news. it was the Stone Cold or it was the grill. But I didn't want that to insinuate I like knew anything that I didn't, so I stayed away from that.
Yeah, no. So the thing that's difficult there is I don't know that someone who's transferred before would be able to be immediately eligible, because I know that the rule is that they're talking about changing is for first-time transfers, and obviously Caleb Groh would not be. So I think the only way that he'd probably be able to be eligible is if he's a graduate transfer, but he's only been in school for 2 years, so I can't imagine that he's gotten his degree at this point. So I don't know. I mean, I think that we just don't know a lot of things about what's going to happen with these rule changes. So like, it's kind of hard to judge. I think that in theory, like it's probably possible, but I don't think I would bank on that unless he's going to come and sit out. He would have a redshirt year. So like that could happen in, you know, like I said, in theory, but I don't think he would be immediately eligible if he did come back.
To be honest, I think it's all premature, Matt. I understand why fans are curious about that, but you got to realize all of these players are learning this for the first time right now, just like all of us are. So I don't want to speak for any of those young people. I mean, that does happen.
We're purely speculating.
David Jenkins. Yeah. I mean, Jenkins is a guy who went from South Dakota State to UNLV when TJ went. So it's certainly possible. Right. I honestly think, Jared, like this sounds crazy, but I want to see what you think. This sounds nuts for a team that went 0-19 in Big 12 play. But I think the number one thing you need to do is retain a couple of your current guys who you want. You know, that's the number one recruiting that's got to start. Because I actually think there's some talent on that roster. Now, I don't think it's a great roster, but like what you don't want to do is go into next year having to replace, 11 guys because they've done that once. Right. I watched Greg McDermott go through that after the end of the Wayne Morgan era with how that thing went down. And that you're really digging out of a pretty deep hole at that point. But to me, I would think that would be maybe the most important thing to do right now is to really key in on that and get your staff assimilated over the next 4 days or so. I know TJ, the staff isn't going to take long. Like again, guys, I talked, he's as good with relationships as anybody I know. And that's more important than just recruiting. That is a nationwide staff. He will have a hell of a staff. I promise you that.
Well, I think there's 3 calls that you got to make if you're TJ, right? I mean, nearly right away, and you make them all back to back to back. The first one I think is to Rasir Bolton, and getting him, keeping him in the fold, getting to know him, because he's going to be a key piece of your team next year. Obviously, he's your best player right now.
And the statement that Rasir put out on Twitter kind of made it seem like he's kind of locked into Iowa State. But you're right. I think you got to make sure you got to.
That's the guy who's going to be the leader of your team. I mean, if we're just being realistic, he's the guy who will have been here the longest, along with George Condit. I think the second one, then you got to get Xavier Foster and make sure that he stays in the fold. I think that he's another cornerstone piece for you. He's someone that you can build around and can be a really core piece of the future of Iowa State basketball. And then the third one is Tyrese Hunter, who is the 4-star point guard out of Wisconsin. I think keeping him is crucial, because I think that he is a very, very good player. And I think that he's got high-end potential for the Cyclones. And you got to try and build a relationship with him quickly. I know he had a good relationship with Steve Prohm. What can you do to keep him in the fold, get him to Iowa State, and have him be your point guard of the future? If you can, I think right there, like that's a pretty solid little base to build from when you've got those 3 guys. I think I agree with Chris. There's a couple other. Oh, did we just lose Chris?
That's all right. We'll get Chris back.
I think I do agree with him that I think that there are some other guys that you can build around. I think that there's some solid pieces on this roster. It's figuring out how to put them all together, and it's figuring out how to make that puzzle work. That's going to be crucial. And but like I said, I think that you've got to make sure that those guys stay in the fold for now, and then you can start turning your attention towards the transfer portal or whatever that may be. However, you're going to add to this roster and bolster it, because it does need an infusion of talent, as we've seen. I mean, you don't go 0-18 in the league if you've got, the players to compete at a really high level.
So a quick question, Jared, this might be for you. I mean, when we think about the hire too, this was the biggest criticism, I think, of Coach Otz, was that he's just a recruiter. I mean, that's what people know him from at Iowa State. He was the lead recruiter for Fred. But obviously with some head coaching experience, I don't know, Chris, you probably know this better than me. How has TJ developed as an X's and O's coach from South Dakota State to UNLV? How have you seen him develop in that way? And how do you think his style of play, as Drake Bulldog asked, what do you think Otz's vision in terms of style of play will be? How does he accomplish that? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this one thing I like about him a lot is so I get why Iowa State fans think that, because he's always been that guy for them. But it was towards the end of the McDermott era, but really when Fred hired him. If you guys remember from Fred's opening press conference, he said the first thing he did when he was named head coach was retain TJ, and then he actually gave him a promotion to associate head coach. And that was when TJ really started to jump into more of a X's and O's and game plan type of role, really for the first time in his career. He didn't want to be one of those guys that was just a recruiter. He wanted to evolve in that type. And that was also why he left to Washington, because he wanted to have that sort of a role on another staff where he could start to learn from more established guys in the business. Comes back to Iowa State. Steve Prohm gives him a great opportunity. But that is not talked about enough. Like, it is so rare. I don't know. I'd love to ask Jamie Pollard this. For two guys who interview for the same job, one of them gets it. Obviously, the other one doesn't. The one who gets it hires one of the ones who doesn't get the job. It's so rare, one, for Steve Prohm to do that and recognize I need this guy's help if I want to win here. And that was really smart of him, because he kept a lot of those players like Niang and those guys who really, were kind of lost at that point. Retaining TJ really helped Prohm in that sense. So Prohm was egoless there. And then for TJ to take the job back after Iowa State had just told him no. And I think that says a lot about both of them. But it was there in that year where he was really doing a ton of I think he may have been like the lead scout on that team. And then clearly he's been a head coach for the last 5 years. So I get why Iowa State fans think that he's still the 26-year-old guy who's, getting Craig Brackens and stuff like that. I think he can still be that guy. I like to think of him as the guy who brings Melvin Edgem to town under Greg McDermott, keeps him for Fred Hoiberg, and then develops him for 4 years and turns him into the Big 12 Player of the Year. Like, you can think of this thing one way or the other, right? Like, we all, if you have a track record in the public light, like, you're going to have positives and you're going to have negatives. But he's certainly evolved, and he's, as far as the style of basketball goes,
yeah.
Like, this is what – Jared, I want your insight on this too. I don't know how much you watch Vegas this year. I watch every game. So that's not TJ's style of ball. Like, they played slow. They played garbage basketball, but they did it because after last year, some moves had to be made. They were a less talented team this year. He was building for the next couple of years there. And he was building for the long term, frankly, in Las Vegas. And Jared, it's like watching Iowa football. We're always like, well, why are they always in these games against these teams that are really good? It's because they garbage up the game and they limit possessions, and then it keeps you in it towards the end. That's what they were trying to do. They weren't trying to be aesthetically pleasing, because he knew if he was trying to play hoy ball against some of those teams that they were just going to get blown out of the gym. So, like, don't look at last year's UNLV team and be like, well, that's TJ's style of play, because it's simply not. If they get the guys, you're going to be looking at, the Hoiberg type of style. And that's what I like, though. If you think about his influences, Greg McDermott, Fred Hoiberg, why do I keep forgetting the guy who he went to work for in Washington,
Lorenzo Romar.
But nonetheless, yeah,
Lorenzo
Romar. We're a legend out there. Yeah, right. So I'm really excited, and I think it'll be a lot of fun once he's got to get his guys. That's clearly it. I'm more of anymore, Jared, just like coaching to the guys you have around you too, because it's going to be so different each and every year. Like, you have to be able to shift and adjust a little bit as a coach, and not just expect every team, if you have to refill it with 6 guys in the spring, to play exactly your style.
I think that people need to keep in mind too with that UNLV team, they had 7 freshmen on that roster.
Yeah.
Like that's a really difficult thing to have to coach people up when you got seven youngsters out there. And then, I mean, even last year you had to replace 10 guys. So like, that's where, when you were talking earlier about having to replace all these people in the program, like he literally had to do that. He had to replace 10 people from the prior team when he got to UNLV. And then he had 7 freshmen on his second team at UNLV. Like, that's not exactly an easy situation to be in. So I think it's one of those things, man. Like I expect them to try and play fast once they've got the guys to do it. And the thing I will say too, like,
but you can't be stupid about it.
No, you can't be stupid about it. But here's my thing, and this has been my issue that I've had with Iowa State basketball for several years, and I've talked about this a lot. I've written about it. They did not have an identity. They didn't have anything that it seemed like they really did really well. I think that they're going to be good on offense once they've got the players who can do that. And that's obviously going to take. You got to go out and hit the recruiting trail to do that. That's step one. But 2, like, I think that TJ and his staff are going to put them in positions to be successful in that sense. And I felt like that has been lacking here for the last several years, where people just don't seem to fit in the roles that they're being put in. It's Matt Campbell and his, round peg, round hole, square peg, square hole. Like, your players' formations place. That's what I always have loved about Matt Campbell, is that they're not going to try and force people into positions that they're not going to be successful in. I think that TJ is going to be good at that as well. And that was something that I thought was going to be key for this hire, is getting someone in who understands that, and not just, saying, well, we're going to run our system and we don't care what people we have in the program. This is what we do. Well, what we do doesn't possibly work with what we've got. So you've got to be willing to be adaptable. You've got to be willing to shift how you want to approach things. And I think that's going to be key for them. Yeah,
I think too, and it just brought us right back into how critical a staff is too.
Yeah,
when it comes to that, you've got to have that rock. I mean, I think Bobby Lutz was just a godsend.
Did we lose Chris?
Yeah, Chris is frozen.
They work together. Am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
You're a little glitchy, but you're good.
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Keep going.
We got the whole family in this one house, and everybody's hooked up to their, all that stuff.
Chris, let me jump in real quick with a comment we got. Former Iowa State legend Rashawn Clark commenting. When you speak to TJ, tell him I said congrats. I'll get him info in the next couple of weeks. And then he says, "Can I be on his staff?" There you go. There's your first development, Chris. Rashawn Clark showing interest.
If Rashawn's still watching, we were having this debate on the radio show the other day about the greatest dunkers in Iowa and Iowa State history, and I had Rashawn. That was my guy. I've never seen a dude dunk the way that he did. Man, he was awesome. That's cool that Rashawn was watching. Thanks for watching, buddy.
Chris, something that I was seeing on the forums before we hopped on here, and something that I think is worth, us discussing, and like, you've been open about you and TJ being friends, but there's people asking how it's going to like impact our coverage. I don't know, something, if that's what you want to weigh in on right now. I wrote on the forums that we've only had a little bit of discussions about that, and it's probably too early to talk too much, but like, do you want to clear the air on that, I suppose, a little bit, if you can?
Yeah, to be honest, like, this is why I'm just being honest. Like, I don't know. Like, we're going to figure all that out. But I can't be reporting on this program. Like, I just can't be objective on it. Like, so we'll figure it out. Jared, you're ready to step. You basically are doing all that now. We'll put together a plan, but I didn't want to jump ahead of the horse either. Cause just because we're friends, like, I didn't even know he was getting the job until today, when literally my dad, I was sitting outside the pool with my daughter here in Phoenix. We just got here, and my dad was on the phone with his friend Paul, and Paul told him that Otz had just gotten hired. My dad's the one who told me. Like, that's how I found out. So
I'm shocked your dad isn't the one who broke the news to everybody, honestly.
I know, well, he was pretty excited about it.
He's more tied in than anybody else.
Hey, Chris, any chance we can get this segment back on? Talking with TJ.
My God, look how young. Look how we're both babies.
You're probably my age there. Yeah, that's like 7 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and then, man, you go back to if you can find some from the McDermott era, will probably even look even worse. But man, so back when they got started, though, for real, that was when the old basketball offices were in Hilton, and it's where like the volleyball office is now. But that's where the basketball office used to be, and I mean, it was nothing. Like it really is. Again, this is why another reason why I like it is Iowa State fans always want a guy who wants to be there, who's one of theirs, who like this is his dream job. I mean, don't you want to give that guy a shot? Like if you could, maybe it doesn't work. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. People get fired and lose all the time. It's high major college basketball we're talking about.
So guys,
it'd be really cool if it works out.
So Jamie kind of talked a little bit about the financial aspect of this too. We talked about that in the video he released about Prom, parting ways with Prom, and then he kind of brought it up in the video today, just about the hire had to make sense financially, right? Especially as you're dealing with COVID and the budget shortfall. It seemed like maybe part of the.
Can I cut you off really quick, Matt? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Breaking news right now out of Lincoln. And Chris, this is something that I would be interested to know if you think this is connected. Bobby Lutz is leaving Fred's staff to pursue coaching opportunities.
Yeah, I would guess he's probably going to end up in Ames then.
Yeah,
that's the
case. kind of what I was.
I don't
thinking.
know that for a fact, but I know that.
Yeah.
Hold on.
We'll let Chris get on this.
I mean, I don't know, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. Those two are very tight. I know the admiration that TJ has always had for Bobby Lutz, and that would be an upgrade. Jared Lutz has not been on the bench, correct?
Yeah, I think he's been the assistant to the head coach or whatever. Basically, he was like what Hobbs was, David Hobbs for Steve Prohm, I believe. I would have to double check that, but I'm like 99% sure. Oh yeah, special assistant to the head coach is what he was.
So that's one of those glorified, like you can't recruit and you can't be on the floor, but you can watch film type jobs.
Yeah, so it says, when I agreed to join Fred at Nebraska as special assistant, there was positive momentum in the NCAA for allowing an additional person to actively coach during practice and games. That has not happened. And then he goes through his whole thing. So talking about why he's just going to get back into coaching. But I mean, that it seems to me that would kind of make sense that this would have come out today, knowing the connections that they've had. That's why I brought that up. I didn't know for sure. But I figured that I would throw that out there.
I mean, I certainly don't know anything.
Yeah, we don't know for certain, but I was just, that's worth noting.
That wouldn't surprise me though, just because I know how close that those two have been in the past. And I know, again, when I was going through TJ's coaching tree, think of this though. I was thinking of this today. The Greg McDermott coaching tree now is 3 of the 4 positions in the state of Iowa.
It's wild.
You know, with DeVries, with Ben Jacobson, and now TJ. It's kind of wild, but all right. So, yeah, I'm gonna finish up here because I'm gonna get done with this. We have a family lunch for the wedding, and then I'm gonna write a quick piece about potential staff members. Do you guys have anything else for me before I bounce?
I don't. I'm going to write a column as well here this afternoon. I'm hosting your show with Ross at 3, so I'll have more reaction to this.
Well, call me. I'll come on with you guys. No problem.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
All right,
thanks,
we're just programming here on the fly. Matt, thanks for helping us out on the fly, buddy.
Yeah, for sure, man. Absolutely. Have fun at the wedding.
All right.
All right, we'll talk to you later, Chris. All right, it's Chris Williams. Jared, you wanna break down a few more of these questions we got coming in, or do you?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
The other thing too is, and I know you've talked about this on the radio and on Cyclone Fanatic as well, just is how important it's going to be to get a solid recruiting class this year, especially with that open transfer market this year. A lot of unknown about that, but man, it's going to be so crucial. And I think that's probably another factor of why they pulled the trigger on this hire and letting Steve Prohm go, is that this is such an integral year. You can really change a program, flip a program. I mean, obviously it's going to take a little bit of time, but if you want to make a quick turnaround, this is the year to do it with, the transfer market is, and a guy like Otzelberger, who we know can get this area really well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's going to be so many good players available. That's the thing. It is worth noting that right now Iowa State only has one open scholarship, I believe, for next season.
That'll change, obviously.
Yeah, I imagine that number will grow here in the coming weeks. But I think that right now, I mean, did you see how many kids left Penn State earlier this week?
No.
There were 6 players that entered the transfer portal from Penn State in one day. Like, that's the kind of thing that's going to be going on here, where there's especially rosters that have got new coaches, not necessarily at Iowa State. I don't know that for certain, but like a lot of these schools that have new coaches, man, look at how many kids are coming, that are guys that were first team All Atlantic 10, first team All Colonial League or all whatever else small leagues that are jumping into that transfer portal. Man, this morning I saw a kid named Fats Russell, Fatts Russell. And I think that Iowa State needs to get that guy just because of his name. I think he's my new favorite basketball player. So if I was TJ Otzelberger, that would be priority number 1, is going to land Fats Russell.
There you go. Fats. I like it. A lot of people talking about bringing in Marcus Pfizer as a coach. I know he's expressed interest in coming back to Iowa State. Get Marcus Pfizer as an assistant. He has deserved an opportunity, says Aaron. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who he brings in on his staff. Like you said, Bobby Lutz is leaving Nebraska, so he'll be available. And like Chris said, probably all signs are aligning to that happening. But yeah, a lot of Caleb Grill mentions as well, as we talked about. But I don't know. We'll have to figure that out if that can even happen. Or
I will say unless I would be rather shocked if Marcus Pfizer was on the staff. I'm not going to completely rule it out, but I would say that's unlikely in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think those are a lot of the questions coming in. Obviously, an exciting day for Iowa State basketball. A new era has begun, but TJ Otzelberger back as Iowa State's, head coach now, former assistant coach for Iowa State. Jared, you're going to have a full recap of this. I know Chris said he's going to have a column as well, so we'll look for that on cyclonefanatic.com. You're hosting KXNO Sports Fanatics today.
Yeah, and then we're going to have Cyclone Fanatic Radio tonight. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to be on from 6 to 7. We're going to figure it out, I guess. So,
yeah. And Jamie Pollard said there will be a press conference on Friday.
Yeah, tomorrow at 10:30. So we'll have a lot more coverage tomorrow. Like today, it'll be a lot of analysis and things like that, but we'll have a lot more coverage of what TJ has to say, and I assume they're going to answer questions. So it'll be good to get into those things.
Sounds good. All right, Jared. Thanks for hopping on. Thanks everyone for watching. Maybe over 500 people watching. It was perfect timing, a little over a lunch hour discussion. So a lot of exciting stuff happening in the world of Iowa State news. So Jared, appreciate you coming on, and we'll look for cyclonefanatic.com for more coverage. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.